What's up, OUXers? Sophia here. Happy 2025. This episode is kind of going back to basics and looking ahead too. So this episode features the audio recording, the audio part of the last episode that Allie and I published on OOUX. We Did It Again, our YouTube channel. If you have not gone over to our YouTube channel and subscribed there and made friends with us over there, please do that. Link is down in the notes somewhere. But you can just put OOUX, I Did It Again into the search, and YouTube will find us for you. So we're going to get the audio on just this like back to the basics. What is OOUX? We end up talking about it for like over 30 minutes. So it is a deep dive into not only OOUX, but also the ORCA process and what it's all about. So if you feel like you just need like a reset on what this even is, definitely check out the audio right here in the podcast. If you want to see our cute faces talking to each other on YouTube, then go listen to it on YouTube. But before you do that, this podcast episode, I want to kind of preface all that nuts and bolts back to the basics stuff that we're going to get into in a minute with how I'm seeing the future of OOUX and 5 things in particular that I'm kind of putting out to the universe that I want to see and that I am predicting to see in 2025 for the OOUX world, 2025 and beyond. So I'm going to go over these 5 things, and then we'll pop over into the conversation with Allie Fisher and I, just talking about what OOUX even freaking is. And again, you can see the video over on YouTube. Okay, so let's jump into it. So did I say Happy New Year? Happy New Year. Okay, here's what I'm thinking about for kind of just how I'm thinking about OOUX differently and how my thinking has evolved. And really a lot happened. And 2024 was a big year for OOUX, a big year for our business, lots of changes. So I feel like a lot of seeds were planted, and then you're going to start seeing that more visibly in 2025. So like a lot of it was just the seeds were planted and now they're like sprouting out into the world. So number one, I am starting to see and frame OOUX as way more than just a set of tools. And I am seeing OOUX as a true, legit career path. So people are starting to build entire consulting practices around OOUX, like just doing OOUX or mostly doing OOUX, or OOUX is like a big part of their consulting practice. I mean, not just me, beyond just me. So this is really, really cool to see. We also have an advanced program now. So when we do our certification in the fall, we actually had 2 tracks. We have our core curriculum certification, and then we have an advanced program that's just like a bunch of next level shit that I teach. And then they actually do mentoring for the core cohort. So it's a really cool program. If you are certified, be thinking about maybe being an advancee this fall. But after the advanced, I call them my advancees, after my advanced strategists graduate from this program, they want more. And so a big part of my year this year is going to be kind of lining up the supply and demand, because I'm basically a bottleneck in my own freaking business. There's a lot of demand for OOUX, and now we have a supply of a lot of professionals that are highly trained in this methodology. And how do we bring them together? So that is really, really interesting. And I'm also seeing not only like OOUX as a career path, but also the curriculum, like stringing together the curriculum so it makes a whole lot more sense. We've basically just been like introducing bits and pieces for the last 4 years. And now we're consolidating, we're stringing things together. So expect to see a lot more clarity on how you progress through your OOUX training and the different options you might have. And then that kind of like beacon of light of really, really strong opportunities on the other side of getting that training. I mean, we've already seen so many people get jobs, and because of OOUX, because of the networking, and also OOUX is showing up on job descriptions. That started happening a few years ago, but we're kind of seeing it more and more. So yeah, so really thinking about like, oh my gosh, 90% of people who go through my program are gonna, I mean, everybody loves it, but most people who go through the program are going to integrate it into their existing work, but they're still going to be researchers, designers, UI designers, UX designers, content strategists, and they're going to weave OOUX in through what they're already doing, and OOUX is going to support their core competencies. But I'm feeling like 1 in 10 people who come in through my program, like they love it as much as I do. And they're like, this is all I want to do. Like, I just want to do this part of the process. And this part of the process is so freaking valuable that I believe we can build an entire, I'll say it again, an entire career path around it, and a niche that is, that's bigger than I personally have even been thinking about it. So that's really exciting. Okay, so number 2, you're going to see OOUX extending beyond tech. So when I came up with the ORCA process and I started doing this OOUX thing, I was a UX designer. I still am a UX designer. So I kind of have been seeing the world through the tech lens and applying this methodology to websites and apps and software. And the last couple years, and this has just really been coming to a head in 2024, is how much this applies to just like problem solving, just understanding anything, and how it can apply to so many different areas of like complexity and hard stuff. So whether that is org design, so I'm doing this in my own business as our business grows, I'm actually OOUXing our organization, I'm OOUXing our business. I've been playing with OOUXing internal family systems and therapy, basically, like OOUXing your inner world. I've seen people apply OOUX to all sorts of things, project management, of course, like everything I do in Notion. I'm a big Notion nerd. Like if I'm creating a system in Notion, I'm going to OOUX it first. I'm going to design it using OOUX. If there's any kind of like relational database C objects that I'm just using for my own life, right? To like manage my Christmas gifts or something like that, I can OOUX that. And I'm just seeing, oh my gosh, more and more and more, even if it's not going to end up on screens, we can use this process, which is really cool. People are using it for service design, for chatbots. We've seen it. I have a course on this, on how it applies to designing for AI, even if that AI is not even screen-based. So how you can actually create a custom chatbot and organize your knowledge base using the ORCA process. So I'm just really leaning into that. Like, that you can learn this and you can apply it to just about anything. So you'll see more of OOUX extending its tendrils beyond tech. On the other hand, so number 3, we're going to see OOUX turning more and more into a fractal and remixing with other parts of our industry. So yeah, on one hand, it'll go beyond tech. And then on the other hand, it's going to go deeper into tech. So you're going to see things like, okay, OOUX for accessibility, OOUX for privacy and permissions, OOUX and design systems, how you apply OOUX with design systems, with Gestalt, OOUX and heuristic analysis. So where is all this coming from? This is coming from the previously mentioned advanced strategist. So one of the pieces of the advanced strategist program, the certification that they go through, is having a leadership project. So finding an area of interest and applying OOUX to it to basically create something that that they feel that the OOUX community needs. So we've been talking a lot about this, about, oh my gosh, like OOUX and accessibility is a great example. There's so much there. I'm not an expert in accessibility. There's people that that is their entire career, and they're coming through the OOUX process and they're getting into the advanced certification, and they're like, all right, how do we create curriculum around how OOUX can help so much with this certain area. So we're going to see more of these remixes. We're going to see these offshoots. Kind of think about them as like expansion packs, even like mini courses, additional trainings that are in specific areas of our industry. So it's kind of like a little bit of an OUX takeover, but it helps support so much that we do. I can see an entire course just on how OUX can help with research. And how do you even like OUX your research plan? So expect to see more of that. Yeah, the OUX takeover or expansion packs. I don't know, however you want to think about it. Okay, what number are we on? Number 4. Okay, number 4. All right, this is one that's just gonna it's just a growth trajectory thing. So OUX community from day one has been amazing. The forum has grown so much, and I'm just seeing that growth accelerate a lot in the forum. So if you're not already part of the forum, forum.OUX.com, go join. It's been a little quiet because it was the holidays and everything. But it just like the amount of peer-to-peer helping each other, and like I go in there and there's all these conversations happening that I didn't even know that were happening. That's really cool to see. So we're also, again, like looking to the advanced program, and the advancees are going to be able to provide helping me kind of like, I don't want to use the term engagement. I hate the term engagement, but like organize the community a little bit more, figure out what are our live events like. So we've really languished on OUX happy hour because meetup is just gross and I don't want to be there anymore and I don't know how to get out. It's going to happen. So I'm like, oh my gosh, there's 4,000 people there, or like 5,000 people there now. I don't know. And I don't want to leave them hanging, but I kind of want to move everybody over to the forum. Anyway, neither here nor there. Yeah, so we're trying to figure out what are our live events going to look like. Also in person, do advanced strategists, like is there some sort of channel or mechanism for advanced strategists to host in-person events, like little happy hours in their hometown so we can meet each other in person more? I really want to do more of that, more meeting each other in person, meeting each other live, small groups, big groups too. I definitely have conference dreams that might not be 2025, retreats, things like that, on how we can connect to each other more and really get to know each other. And I'm just like, I'm seeing that happen. As I'm recording this, actually, we're going to be packing soon to go to a wedding in London, to Imogen Levy's wedding, who is a OG OUXer. I met her through this program, and that's just so freaking cool to me, that we're flying across the world to go to her wedding. I've seen pictures of OUXers traveling to Disney World together, their families meeting up, seeing each other at conferences. So that is just so freaking cool. So we're going to be really focused on creating some mechanisms to just make that easier and make it a more inviting and inclusive and warm and fuzzy community. So look for that in 2025. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is I think that in 2025, we're just going to see OUX go more mainstream. And I don't mean that like in a bad way, like in a good way. So the reason I say this, I've seen lots of little signs. And yeah, I mean, I've gotten invited to speak at some big conferences, Rosenfeld conferences. Even my first article was on a list apart, so that's cool. But when a couple weeks ago, Nielsen Norman Group did a little OUX video on their YouTube channel, that really kind of like, I don't know, that blew me away. I mean, it shouldn't blow me away. It's about time, right? But that was just such a kind of an endorsement, right? I think of NNG as like the granddaddies of UX. And so for them to make this like really beautiful, succinct, well done video about object-oriented UX was a big deal. I feel like, and I guess I'll say I've felt in the past sort of like OUX has always been a little fringy. People give it the side eye sometimes. Like, is that really a thing? Or is that just like basically domain-driven design, or basically content modeling, or basically information architecture? So I kind of felt like we're the redheaded stepchild of information architecture or something that for a lot of people that kind of look at it like this is just a trend that will pass. So I think that people are thinking that maybe it's not just a trend, that maybe OUX is here to stay and we're not going anywhere. And it is actually a thing and it deserves to be here and it gets to be here. So I feel like we're just going to see, and maybe if you are practicing OUX, which I'm guessing you are in some way or form because you're listening to this podcast right now, but if you're practicing OUX or you're talking about OUX or you're trying to convince your team that, hey, this is a thing that we should try and do, that you might be getting less pushback. And then if you do get pushback, send them that NNG video. Just like I'm sure it'll pop up on, we'll put it in the show notes if, look in the show notes. Hopefully it's there. And, but you can look on YouTube, NNG OOUX, and it'll come right up. Share that with them. So it's a really nice little stamp of approval, and I'm expecting to see more of that. I feel like there's just been a big increase in people kind of like giving me the solid head nod on OUX instead of that side eye. So all really good news. So to recap, OUX is a career path. OUX beyond tech. OUX is a fractal with lots of remixes and expansion packs. OUX as a deeper and more, I'll use the word intimate community. And then OUX is a little bit more mainstream and kind of getting that stamp of approval. So that is what I'm seeing for 2025. Please stick around for the rest of the episode here. We're going to switch over to the conversation with Allie and I, where we talk about what is OOUX. So now that you've gotten like the vision casting for the future, stick around. I think this is a really fun conversation. If you do want to go ahead and listen to it over on YouTube, if you want to see our faces, check out the link below for that. Or just search OOUX We Did It Again in YouTube and make sure to like and subscribe and comment and keep the conversation going. All right. So much love to all of you listening. And I hope you have an amazing 2025. Welcome to the Object-Oriented UX podcast, a podcast about tackling complexity head-on, gracefully organizing massive amounts of information, and designing scalable, future-proof, and of course, naturally intuitive object-oriented user experiences. An OUXer is a powerful blend of information architect, business analyst, facilitator, and UX strategist. If this sounds like you or what you aspire to, you are so in the right place. I'm Sophia Prater, UX designer, chief evangelist of Object-Oriented UX, and your host. Let's jump into it. Hi, I'm Sophia Prater, the creator of the ORCA methodology and the Object-Oriented UX certification program and co-host of OOUX We Did It Again with Allie Fisher, OUX superstar, UX consultant, and UX researcher. And today we are here to finally really break down what is OOUX, why is it important, why are more and more people talking about it and calling it things like their secret sauce and their secret weapon and rocket fuel. Like, let's make this rocket fuel not so much of a secret. Let's demystify this. So, Allie and everyone watching, okay, I'm going to take y'all on a journey, all right, to explain OOUX. All right. So when you hear the word zoo, what are the first three words that come to mind?
Animals, cage, zookeeper. Yeah, those three.
Cool. I had popcorn was one of mine when I thought of it.
Yes, that's so nostalgic.
Yes. But yes, definitely animals, popcorn, enclosures. Also, like smell came up. So like stinky came up. So I did have an adjective in there.
Like hay.
Yeah. Well, I think about like the gorilla smell at the Atlanta Zoo. It is intense. So okay, so if y'all did this exercise, comment below in the comments. Let us know, like, what were your three words? What three words did you come up with when I just did that quick word association with you? So likely, if you did this exercise, probably three, maybe two of three of your words were nouns, likely concrete nouns. animal, trainer, shows, demos, enclosures, habitats. Likely we are not going to see a whole lot of verbs. All right. So did any of you come up with walking, viewing, learning, feeding, eating, or even adjectives? So I did have one adjective that I came up with, which was smelly, but like hot, fun, joyful, or maybe even some abstract nouns like summertime or something like that. So there is amazing research that backs this up, and I will link some articles below. But object-oriented UX is simply a philosophy for building digital systems that respects the fact that people think in objects. So that whole idea that people think in objects, look at those articles below for a little bit more of research backup to this. But basically, this is how people understand their world. And OUX just says we should respect that. That's how people learn to understand and think and piece together an environment. So we need to make the objects in our digital systems really clear, recognizable, and relevant as well. So the objects in the user's digital system should align to the user's mental model of that domain. So if I'm creating a digital system for a zoo, it's very likely it's going to include animals, enclosures, habitats, employees, trainers, maybe tickets or something like that, depending on the audience.
Yeah.
And what were you saying? Shows?
Shows, like things you're going to go to.
Demonstrations,
Yes.
events.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So OUX is simply that, just a philosophy that says, hey, this is how people think. So we need to respect that. And we need to design our systems to reflect it. Allie, do you have anything to add to that on like how do you define OUX?
Oh my gosh. I mean, since I've been using it, OOUX is like single-handedly the tool that's given me my UX confidence to make so many informed decisions around like every stage of the product design. So I'm thinking, when I'm working with development teams to understand and discuss functionality and requirements of a product, I'm using OUX. In user research, when I'm trying to like listen and understand someone's processes or new terms in an industry and I'm unfamiliar with, like I'm using OUX. I'm thinking about those objects, those actions they can take, how they relate to one another. In design, when I'm helping define something like the navigation and flow through a product and organization of content. In strategy, when I'm helping companies like prioritize and scope the experience, literally OUX has been like this backbone of my consulting process and how I'm now able to just jump in and solve any problem I'm confronted with.
Backbone is a great word for it because it's still like all the other stuff still happens, right? So I often say that like OUX isn't this like, oh, stop doing everything you're doing and scrap it all. You're doing everything wrong. It's like, no, just add this to your process for this like really nice, solid foundation or backbone that helps link everything else together and like support everything else and make everything else easier and more effective. So it just kind of plugs into everything else you're already doing. It's almost like fairy dust you can put on your whole way of working that just really brings it all together. So I want to share also some fun new definitions from Cohort 10 Advanced OUXers who just got their advanced certification. Okay, so we have the certification and now we have an advanced certification. So this is from Elena Haskins. She said, OUX is a game-changing framework that equips us with an actionable way of translating complexity of any product or domain into something that is easy to understand and navigate. So super succinct. Love that. Game changing is something that we hear a lot. And what I want to say about game changing is like, this is not really a normal way for UX designers to work. Like we often are thinking about the adjectives and we're thinking about the verbs. Like this system should be intuitive and slick and modern. And then this is all the things that somebody needs to do. Here's the journey that they need to take. Here's all the steps that they need to go through. But there's not a really big or any part in a lot of UX designers' process to say like, here's the concepts that are important. Now, information architecture does that a little bit, okay? But this is really bringing it into product design. It's really bringing it into really the mental model work. And the thing is even though that feels like a very different way for UX designers to work, you mentioned developers. Like this is
Yeah.
not different for developers. So this is going to help you communicate so much better with developers who are thinking in objects or entities, databases, and thinking about how data is collected around objects and concepts. So your developers will find this very, very familiar, and it will really help you kind of bridge the gap with communicating with developers and collaborating with them. So another one is from Mary Ann Bell, and she said, OUX is a design philosophy grounded in the idea that humans naturally think in objects, nouns. So our virtual systems should reflect that thinking. It emphasizes conceptualizing systems with clear objects that have consistent attributes, actionable affordances, and intuitive relationships. And that is kind of nodding to the process a little bit that I want to get into.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So I want to talk more about ORCA. All right. About the how.
ORCA. Say more about,
Ooh,
ORCA.
ORCA. Yes. So this is the process that we go through as OUXers. Now, OUX, again, is just a philosophy, but ORCA is the how. Okay. That is how we actually do this work and get all of these benefits of better communication, more intuitive systems, easier to design, easier to develop. So before I go into the how, I want to take everybody on a little journey.
Ooh,
Allie, do you want to go on this journey with me?
I want to go. Where are we going?
Go on the journey.
What bags? What do I need to pack?
You need to get your sun hat and your water bottle because we're going to the zoo. All right.
Okay. All right.
We're going to the zoo, and this is this zoo is a wonderful user experience for the animals. Okay. It is what we need to just go ahead and say that this is a sanctuary for animals. Animals love it here. All the animals are very, very happy here. But this is a total UX fail of a zoo for the human beings. Okay. And I'm going to break it down on what would be a really horrible user experience for a zoo. All right. Okay. So we're going to this physical zoo. And the first thing that is really confusing about this zoo is all the animals look the same.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of boring. All right.
You can't tell the difference. It's kind of boring. So you can't tell the difference between them until perhaps like you get really close to the enclosure. So like maybe you have to like work really hard. Like you have to get like right here and you're like, oh, that's a panda bear, or like, oh my gosh, that's a tiger. And then on top of that, you really can't tell the difference between the bathrooms and the gift shops and the lion enclosure. All right.
Oh no. So
Until
I might go to the bathroom and go to the lion enclosure to go to the bathroom.
Whoops.
Whoops. Now I'm food. No.
Backing out, right? Okay. So no labels, no signage, no indicator of what's inside. Basically, what's happening here is really different things are looking the same. All right. You just really can't tell.
Like hell, Sophia. This sounds terrifying. I have nightmares.
This is not fun. This is not a fun zoo. No. Okay. So on top of that, all right, the demonstrations or like the shows or the events about the animals are completely disconnected from the animal enclosures. So like the bird of prey event is over next to the zebras, and like the feed the zebras event is over by the lions. Which is also confusing because it's like, wait, is it the feed the lions or the feed the zebras? What are the lions and the zebras doing together? Okay. So like you want to go see the demo, but like, no, birds of prey over by the zebras. Okay. And let's imagine the Animals of Africa gift shop is a mile walk from the African safari section of the park. All right. So basically related things are completely isolated from each other. There's like no rhyme and reason on how they're connected. And maybe it like takes a while to actually get from the related things. Okay. So next, all right, let's say you want to buy an African safari water bottle with like the zebras and the lions on there. Okay. But so you go to the gift store, but you can't pay for it at the gift store. All right. You have to take it all the way to the ticketing booth. That's where the only place they have cashiers. You have to go to the ticketing booth to buy your water bottle. Okay. All right. Or the you get like a
I'm guessing they're not selling a lot of water bottles then. Huh?
That's a very good point. They probably are not going to sell a lot because it's difficult to buy it. And we're going to talk more about how that applies to digital systems. All right. So another example of this would be like you get a bowl of ice cream and there's no spoons anywhere. Like you can't find a spoon. So you're just like, I'm just going to eat it like stick my face in it or something like that. Okay, so basically what's happening here, it's hard to take action because the means to take action is completely disconnected from the thing that you're trying to take action on. Okay, finally, the real kicker here. Okay, trainers and employees, so let's just say trainers. Trainers are not required to wear uniforms. Like some do, some don't. Depends on the day, but it's not like they're not really required to wear a uniform. And in the gift store, they actually sell t-shirts that look identical to the employee uniforms. So you've got visitors that look like trainers and trainers that look like visitors. So like you don't know who to ask a question to. You don't know who, like maybe you do ask a question, but they're like, I don't work here. So basically what this is you have the same thing, a trainer that looks different depending on where you are or which instance of a trainer you're looking at. Okay. So you really can't identify trainers versus visitors. All right. This sucks, right?
Yeah, as someone that goes to like Disney parks quite often. This sounds like the alternative universe, like the flip side of a Disney park. Like nothing is working how it should. Terrible experience. No one's coming here.
Yeah, can you imagine this like Animal Kingdom like this? Like
no one would exactly go. What I was picturing. Yes,
no one would go. It'd be horrible. All right.
No, they'd be out of business so fast.
They would be out of business so fast. What's up, OUXers? There is something very important that I have neglected to do in the first 50 episodes of this podcast, and that is to implore you, dear listener, for a review. So here I am, asking ever so nicely for you to drop a rating and review of the OUX podcast into either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This can really help us spread the OUX love. So if you've gotten any value from OUX and the ORCA process, which I'm assuming you have since you're here, I'd be so appreciative for a few minutes of your time. Okay, so how to do this? Don't actually go click on the rating metadata because that would be way too intuitive. On Apple Podcasts, go to the podcast detail page, scroll to the bottom, and you'll see some big stars down there that you can add stars. And then underneath that, there is another little link that says create a review. So that would be amazing. And on Spotify, you've got to do this on the mobile. On Spotify mobile, go to the 3-dot menu on that detail page and hit rate. And actually on Spotify, even on an episode detail, you can leave a comment there too. If you scroll down the episode detail, there'll be something that says something like, how did you like this episode? And feel free to put your thoughts there. Thank you so much and happy OUXing. So we're laughing at this because sometimes UX fails do happen like this in the physical world, and we laugh at them, and it's funny, and it can be annoying sometimes. But because designing in the physical world is actually attached to the laws of physics, it's often like actually kind of harder to make these mistakes. But here's what happens. Yes. When we become digital designers and we're designing without the laws of physics, kind of like keeping us honest, what we end up doing is we end up doing things that are very, very unintuitive, okay? That are not based on how our brains evolved to understand reality. And being disconnected from the laws of physics is actually great. I mean, that's why technology is so amazing, is because like you can control Z, right? Like how many times do you like drop your coffee cup and want to be like, oh, where's the control Z? Like we want that sometimes or like we want to like Google our closet or something like that to find something. So being detached from the laws of physics gives us so much power, but it can also confuse the hell out of people because some laws of physics we just don't want to break. So OOUX says, let's make sure that the objects, their relationships, what they can do, what we can do to them, the information about these objects is really useful, really relevant to the user's goals, the user's expectation, and the actual design that like makes those objects, relationships, and CTAs and attributes, makes that all really easy to understand based on how our brains are evolved. So that leads us to the ORCA process: objects, relationships, calls to action, and attributes.
Love it. Yes.
So this is when people talk about breaking down complexity. This is such an amazing formula for really analyzing anything you're trying to understand. Really anything. It could be the project that you're working on as a UX designer. It can be a political movement. It can be something, you know, we're going to do an episode eventually on anchors, because Allie and I, while on a boat, realized we know nothing about anchors. And we were like, we could OOUX that or ORCA that to really understand the whole anchor industry and how does that actually work? And what is the science behind anchors? What are the different types of anchors and how do anchors and boats connect? Like, so really anything you want to understand.
I've said this to you. I know that like I use this process because it's visual, and which we'll kind of get into, but this works so well for, I mean, I can picture the post-it notes whenever I'm trying to listen to someone. When I hear them say a noun, I think, okay, how does that relate to that? I picture the green as actions. Like all of this is now just ingrained in how I listen to others and learn. And I think that's just so important because you're able to just quickly jump in and understand something with speed. Even though I know nothing about anchors, I could read an article and be like, okay, I'm starting to understand this a little bit more because I formed that visual in my head of it and how they relate and what all the pieces are.
So that brings us to like the colors. There's color coding involved, which will probably pop some things up on the screen to help you out with that. But I think it was you who said it first, or maybe it was somebody else who was like, I use this as a tool for listening.
Yeah.
Because you can hear like stakeholders, blah, 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 talking to you about a lot of complex stuff that they've, have 15 years of experience on and you have 2 days of experience on. And then, but you can start being like, that's an object. That's a CTA.
And then
that's
an
attribute. Those are relationships.
Oh, wait, how does that relate? Does that relate in any way? Are those people like using that over there? Oh, interesting. And then that leads to even more. It's like such a great way to even get started with. I mean, I know when I started in UX, I was intimidated by what questions do you even ask to stakeholders in the room? And this is such a great way of like, I know nothing about this product yet, and I'm coming in to help advise or help figure out what the experience should be. And if I can at least know and rely on some easy questions that is going to help us all in the room learn and kind of dig in different directions to learn about it, like that, I mean, that's already a time saver and going to get us so much further.
Totally. Like I more and more I'm saying that like one of the biggest deliverables or outputs. I mean, we have so many beautiful artifacts that we make, the object map, the nav flow, the CTA matrix, but like I think one of the biggest values is we come up with a list of awesome questions. Like it is the questions that get bubbled up through the process, like is the product. I mean, to be able to send those questions back to a research study, to be able to ask them to the developers, to the stakeholders, to the subject matter experts, to the users, and being able to like, I don't know, just like smoke out all that complexity and find those questions so pretty easily. Like they just kind of start popping up. You're like, wait a second. What's the difference between X and Y? So let's play this game. Let's sort of just like verbally design. Let's say we're going to design some software, take it out of the physical for the zoo and some software for animal trainers. Okay. Like let's not take it any further than that. Software for animal trainers for them to run their day. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to start with objects. All right. And first, okay, wait a second. First, we need to determine what is an object, like object versus component.
Yes.
Do you have thoughts?
Yes, I have thoughts. Okay. So when I love your example of like an event is the actual object. It's the thing I'm going to be coming to, let's say a site at the zoo to see, okay, what events can I go to on my visit, right? But what is a component or UI is something like the calendar picker. Like, well, how are we going to show and present those events to someone? That's the calendar picker. And you always say, well, I'm not coming to the site. I'm coming there to learn what can I actually go to and what am I going to be interested in? It's not, oh, you got a really nice drop down that I can select and choose, this year. I'm coming for the meat of it. I'm coming for what's actually important to me. Or, also thinking about like it's the component is the package, right? Like I'm coming for what's inside of that. I'm coming for not so much the card or the detail page of it. I'm coming for the actual information and content related to that event. When's the time of the event? What am I going to see? How long will it be? Do I need to bring snacks because it's going to be hours long or something? Right. How early do I need to get there? Like that's what's inside that I'm interested in, not so much the outside kind
Yeah.
of
I mean,
UI
design
piece.
systems are so important for consistency. It's like, I mean, having all the different types of cards and all the different templates for your detail pages and all your UI elements, your calendar pickers and your drop downs, and making sure like you only have like one kind of drop down and it's awesome and accessible and on brand. Like that's all super, super important. But at the end of the day, nobody's coming for detail pages. Nobody's coming for cards. Nobody's coming for drop downs. Like they're coming for the stuff either inside or that UI helps you get to. All of it is a means to an end, right? Nobody's coming for the design system. We get so caught up in like making the awesome design system and thinking that that is our material. But really that is the packaging. Like what is the stuff inside? What are people actually coming for? They're coming for animals and shows and, popcorn, right? That's the stuff,
Snacks.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, there's like, would you rather have the box of popcorn or like the popcorn? Like, I'll just give me the popcorn in my hand. Like the box alone is just trash. Not throwing any shade to design systems. We love design systems in the OUX world, but we want to make our design systems somatically tied to the actual concepts. So if we're thinking about this animal training application, okay, so going back to that, well, like first let's go back to that physical space. So right, we want objects to be clear and distinct. We want to be able to tell the difference between giraffes and lizards and bathrooms and gift shops, right? Okay, but in the software, like what might be some things in a trainer's mental model? I mean, animals for sure.
Animals. I'm thinking like, what do they like, the locations of the animals. So like the actual enclosures or cages, like, I'm thinking about the feeding times or if they have to treat any of the animals.
So like appointments to like feed or administer some medication, even medications or prescriptions. Like probably that's a big part of it is like to keep the animals healthy, especially this is a sanctuary for maybe recovering animals. So there might be procedures that they need to have on a regular basis that I think, and also the demos or the shows for the animals would probably be another big one. Even like the difference, and this is like getting to there's animal, which is zebra. And then there's like Olivia, the zebra, right?
Yes.
So like, which is it? Like there's the actual animal, like Olivia, the zebra has an age. She's the one that's in enclosure 3 versus Bruce, the zebra is in enclosure 2 and they can't be in the same enclosure.
No.
Right?
They don't get along. Like, where are you going to write? Yeah, they have that information, right? Don't put them in when you're cleaning one of their cages. Don't put them together.
Animal to animal relationships, right? So basically what we want here is we want to make sure that with our objects that they're really distinguishable, that we can like tell the difference between them, that we don't have that thing where like the bathroom and the gift shop look exactly the same. We don't want a medical appointment to look just like a feeding appointment or like zebra, the species, to look exactly like, what did I say? Olivia, the zebra. Okay. Like those are actually instances of two different things. All right. With different structure and different information about them and different calls to action. So we want to make sure that they look different. So when the user is interacting with this, they could be like, okay, that is a cleaning on my schedule. And I could even see the other trainer who is doing that cleaning. And that is the cleaning is happening in this particular enclosure. And then this demo is happening at this location / enclosure. And this is the trainer who is doing it. Or this is the trainer I'm doing it with. So so being able to see the difference between all those objects is so important. So you might think like, well, that never happens in the digital space. I never do that.
Please.
Go check out our playlist. So we have playlists for each one of these. So we have a playlist all about masked objects, and you can see all these examples that we found, and then you will start seeing them. You'll start seeing them out in the world. You might start seeing them in your own work and your own software that you work on at your company, to be able to see like, ooh, we could differentiate these a little bit more to, say like, we don't just have cards that anything can go in. We're going to make an animal card and we're going to make a medication card, and we want to make sure that they look different. Okay. So moving on to relationships. So of course animal safari gift shop should probably be next to the animal safari region of the park, and then like next to like the zebras and all the other African animals. The demo should be next to the enclosure that it's for. So like the bird of prey demo, we're probably going to want that next to the bird of prey enclosures. And in the physical world, again, like it would be harder to make that not true.
Oh yeah.
But in the digital world, like just as easy actually to make that not true, because no laws of physics preventing us from making these weird mistakes. So easy. So it's actually even like takes a little bit, not too much, but a little bit more effort, because we have to map the relationships so that we can design it in a way so those things are next to each other. Mm-hmm. So like we were kind of already talking about this, but in the software, like how do animals relate to enclosures? So like, what is this animal? Like, what is Olivia's current enclosure, right? Yeah. Or even like if shift is an object. So how does that relate to other trainers? Can I see who else is on the shift with me? So we need to find out. So these are like questions, right? So like kind of like what other questions would we ask if we're like tasked with designing this? Can you think of any other questions?
Yeah, I'm thinking like about like when we're talking about the medications and even feedings, like the relationship between like, okay, this animal is going to have, there might be like the type of food that I want to see, like, okay, this is what we're feeding or the amount of it, like, but it's going to be different for each animal. And so like that relationship between, well, what food does the animal get? And maybe that's in the system itself, or what medication and what dosage, and like seeing that relationship, because it's not going to be on just the general zebra, only some animals, which gets into a whole nother
or that is a question though. Like, is it like, okay, like is actually, is food even an object within the system? Like, is that something that we need to manage within the system? And they could say, yes, totally. Like feeding schedule and like even inventory of food, right? So like, do we need to order more of a certain type of food? And then how much is food tied to individual animals versus just a species? Is it like, this is the zebra food? And is it like there's zebra food, but like the elk can also get this food, and the bears can also get this food? Like all the herbivores basically get these same pellets, or is it more specific, right?
And this gets into scoping. I was talking about like these conversations, the questions we're asking for a organization to answer, of saying, no, we don't go into that. Or actually like, wow, we do have that software over here that helps us do inventory of food. Maybe we should combine this, especially if we're creating custom software. Like maybe that'll save us some time and money. And, what would that look like, even if it's years down the road? So having these kinds of conversations can really get into scope a little bit. Like, is that part of this or is that not? No. Okay. So we're not going to have that in here. Let's cut that object out. We don't need that relationship right now.
Totally. That is like some of the biggest feedback that I get, is that this helps, especially like if you work at an agency or a consultancy, like getting to scope with your client through this process of like, is the food object in or out? And then if it's in, like how much, like, are we tracking inventory? Like, I mean, that you could talk about all the features all day, but it's so easy for stuff to fall through the cracks when you're going through O, R, C, and A. Like it just can't hide. Like that stuff will come up. Those questions will come up. And you'll be able to, put edges around like, what are we actually designing? And what are we designing now? What are we designing later? So this is where we're trying to avoid what we call isolated objects. Again, we have a whole playlist on this for y'all. So this is where what we want to do is we want to connect things the way that things connect naturally in the real world. We want to connect them the same way in the system, because that's how people are going to expect to navigate. All right. So this is really one of the most intuitive ways to navigate, because this is how we're navigating in our minds. We're navigating through the connections. All right. So when I think about Bianca, I think there's a Bianca too.
Olivia
and Bianca, like the zebras, and Bruce too. I want to know which enclosure they're in. So if I click on enclosure 2, I want to see all the animals that are currently in enclosure 2. Like, I think, right? Is that important? Or do the animals go from enclosure to enclosure? And how do I know? Is it through some sort of RFID tracking? How do I even know?
Oh my gosh. I've got to tell you, I worked on a project that did have to do with animal tracking between cleaning. I did. And this is really important. And it got very complicated because we did need to know, for like safety reasons, like what animals, say one of them got sick, you need to make sure that There's tracking of, well, what enclosure were they in and who else, what animals were there. So tracking that was very important. So going all the way through this, and this, like, I just remember this part was pivotal to understanding the complexities of needing to track the location of animals over time and when they might be moving. And you want the experience in the software to be so seamless, because you're going to need trainers to do that all the time during the day, marking if they've moved the animal in their physical, if they actually open the gate and moved them. You're going to want to have the software be really easy so that they are doing that tracking, because that's really important long term.
Yeah. So even seeing like, okay, and do you have a history? Like this could get so, like, just to your example, this could get really complicated of like, not only do we want to know where Bianca, what enclosure she was in today, but maybe we rotate enclosures because that's really good for, animal health or mental health, to rotate so they have different scenery. So we want to know where Bianca was yesterday. All right. Because yesterday is when they started getting sick, and we want to see all the other animals that were also in that enclosure to, give them a treatment or something like that based on the enclosures. So this, like, being able to see those relationships and be able to say like, okay, Bianca yesterday, enclosure 2. Okay, click on enclosure 2, scrub it back to yesterday, see all the other animals. All right. And then to be able to click on one of those animals, see the details of those animals, see if anybody else has logged any kind of symptoms or anything like that. So being able to navigate through the connections, it's the most intuitive way to navigate. There's nothing intuitive about navigating across the top of a navigation. Like, we still want to have that, but that is what we like to call in the OUX world the fire escape. Yes. So just like, okay, like get me back to the main navigation. But really, when you're in it and you're working, you want to navigate through those relationships. So we need to build those avenues, but to build them, we first have to understand them, like what actually makes sense. So if you're like, that never happens, again, check out our playlist. We have so many examples of isolated objects, and you'll start seeing them everywhere as well, and hopefully start preventing them in your own work. Okay, we're making it through. So the C of ORCA stands for calls to action, or CTAs. And so again, like, this is like, you get your bowl of ice cream and you have no spoon. Okay. So, or you buy something and you don't want to have to walk all the way across the park to be able to purchase the thing that you want to buy. Right. So this is where the object is disconnected from the means of taking action on it. Usually in the digital world, we're talking about like the button, the call to action is just sort of like floating around somewhere else, or doesn't happen to be on that page. So one of the things that we do when we get to CTAs is we don't just think about the actions and the verbs and make sure that they're really nicely attached to objects. Like, that is a big part of it. We also think about the roles, right? So with like this software, like, yeah, it's for animal trainers, but like, is there an admin role? Are there managers? Is there a veterinarian staff? Are there like, or is there like a trainer that has veterinarian skills, right? So is there combination roles of like trainer plus veterinarian? So we start getting into permissions, and that is mind-boggling and exciting, but we get into it really, really early on to start asking that question. Who are the different roles that would log into the system and actually have different permissions and be able to do different things to these objects within the system? So like, what can a trainer do to an animal? Like, they could like flag them as sick is one thing that you mentioned, like maybe add them to a demo. So again, like maybe even like create the relationships. They're all interconnected. All these steps are interconnected. Like, what can managers do to an animal that maybe a trainer can't do, or something like that?
Yeah. Or who, like the admin of the system, like who's actually entering in all the animals' names and information about them? Do they update the weight of the animal over time? Like, who is entering that information about it? Yeah, those could be multiple different people. And then thinking about, how does the interface change for those different people? And then making sure those actions that they expect to be able to do, because that's their role, show up there and show up anytime they see that animal. So if I'm on the card level, or that, making obviously decisions about how the frequency that they're doing those actions, but making sure that they're always showing up so that they can complete that task with ease, which is what we want.
Exactly.
So what we want to do.
That's such a great example of like updating the weight. So we might say, if we're thinking in flows only, we might say, they only update the weight when they're having a appointment. So I can only update the weight when I'm like within the appointment details screen and I see Bianca there. Okay, so Bianca's having her appointment, and there I can update the weight. But that makes so many assumptions about how people work. And there's like, maybe I look at or maybe it's like not updating the weight because, yeah, let's just use that example. So maybe I'm doing something else, just not an actual appointment. And I recognize that we need to weigh her. We weigh her, but I'm looking at her in a different view, in a different screen, and I want to update the weight, but I can't do it from there because I have to like go into an appointment. We see that all the time where kind of assumptions are made about like, oh, the user would only need to take this action in this one context. And that is often not true. So you should at least be able to access that really from wherever you are. There's a few exceptions. There's exceptions to all these rules, but in general, like if you are seeing that object, you want the handles and the means to take action to be carried with that object. It would be like, I go into another room and all of a sudden my coffee mug doesn't have a handle anymore just because it's like in a different context. Oh, you don't drink coffee in the bedroom. You only drink coffee in the office. You only did the handle there. Like that would be silly in the physical world. And we do it in the digital world all the time. And that's what we call broken objects. Again, we have a whole playlist about broken objects that you can get into. This is when our CTAs are disconnected from our objects. And we just really want to make sure that we place the CTAs as close or even on those objects as possible.
This is the one I think is the top. This is one I hate the most. Or I mean, really? I think it's like detrimental to an experience if you can't complete a task. I don't I think that's going to just alienate and frustrate. I think it has the highest frustration point in my mind out of all of these, but
well, this brings up a good point of like a lot of people think that object-oriented UX means like objects first or like objects are better over the verbs or the flows. And it's like, no. Like figure out your objects in service of people being able to get stuff done within the system, right? Like this is foundation so that all the UI and all the task flows and all that amazing like people meeting their goals, right? You want to have that foundation of really solid objects to serve the user interface and to serve the ability to go through task flows, right? But if the object isn't clear, then, and you're not clear on the object and you're just thinking in screens and UI, it is very easy to disassociate the buttons from the actual things, from the concept of the thing. So that's what we're trying to bring together here so that things are just more intuitive and more natural for people. Okay, so the last one is attributes, the A of ORCA. So we went through objects, relationships, CTAs, and now we're at attributes. So this is where we get into the details. This is like the properties of the object. The attributes are the information about the object. And we want to make sure it's the right information, all right? Like what do people actually care about? But we also want it consistently displayed as possible because attributes are what make an object distinct. So like lizards have scales, zebras have fur and stripes, okay? Lions have their big furry manes. Trainers have blue collared shirts with the zoo logo on it, right? So that we can tell trainers and zebras and visitors apart. So in our software, okay, so the demonstration. Okay, it's got relationships, right? We already talked about that. It's got relationships maybe to the animals that are going to be in the demo. It's got relations to the enclosure and the trainer that's going to do the demo. Okay, it has CTAs on it. We didn't really talk about that, but it has CTAs like maybe cancel the demo for rain or something, or changing the time, or switch. Maybe I can switch out the trainer. That might be a CTA as well. This trainer's sick. Let me switch it out for another trainer. But it also has attributes. Properties. Yes. Okay. So like what might be some attributes?
Oh my gosh. Like you said, time, you know, like it has a time. When is this demo? I'm thinking about like, are there any things I need for the demo itself? Ooh. Like, do I need, tools? Like what would, if I'm always doing demos with zebras, do they have any tricks they do when do I need any
apples?
Hula hoops or apples, different things I'm going to use during the demo.
Yeah.
So that might be like a notes area, like I'm thinking about like just kind of things as a trainer that I would want to quickly have available, like say I'm know to gather before the demo.
Right. So things that, so if we're thinking about that might be some core content, right? So we have a section for remember what to bring, maybe an outline of the demo, like, okay, yeah. Here's the basic things I need to make sure to cover during the demo. And then potentially from the trader perspective, like safety tips too, like safety reminders could be a big thing to have on the demo. Date and time, location. We said the enclosure, but like maybe it's like a certain part of the enclosure. Maybe there's like a geolocation or there so I can like navigate to it easily. I don't know. So definitely it has a structure to it. Okay. So what we don't want, all right, is we don't want, like, let's just take the date and time. Probably one of the most distinguishing attributes on the demonstration, right? Like animals probably don't have a date and time, or if they do, it's like last updated and it's probably not prioritized in the same way. So if we take a demo, and what we don't want is to say like, okay, if it's in the calendar view, the date and time is like in red in the upper right-hand corner. But then if I go over to my dashboard, right, where it's like upcoming demos and it's near the top of the page, all of a sudden the date and time moves to like the other corner, the other side, and it like gets displayed. It's in a different font. It's in like dark gray instead of in red. And it's basically my cheese has been moved. They've moved my cheese around. And this is not only bad from a design perspective, like I just created inconsistency for no reason. And I just worked a little bit hard and redecided where the date and time should go and how it should be displayed. This is adding more development effort. And worst of all, this is adding cognitive load, because all of a sudden what we have is what we like to call in the OUX world, we have shape shifting. All right. So we really want to prevent this arbitrary shape shifting which is usually happening by attributes moving around. So we have these attributes, we have the properties and the information. We want to keep it as consistently prioritized and displayed as possible. Okay. So even something like, I like to say, I love to put people in a circle. So trainers having their faces in a circle, but then like in another part of the application, their faces are now in a square. All right. This all of a sudden, like that tiny little thing, one, it's extra development effort, and it also adds a little bit of cognitive load. It makes it a little bit more difficult to recognize that thing. So we really want to avoid any kind of arbitrary shape shifting. And the reason that we want to do that, for all the reasons I just mentioned, but also because you need shape shifting. Like we actually have to have it. We just want it to be intentional, because say like the demo, we have the demo from the past, the demo in the future, right? Or a demo that is a feeding demo versus a sort of like a more educational demo. So different demos, or a demo that I'm doing versus a demo that you're doing, right? That somebody else is doing, that might need to look slightly different. And we want to communicate those differences between the instances. So we do want to have a little bit of shape shifting. What we just don't want is unintentional shape shifting, because we basically have a budget for shape shifting and we want to keep it like as low as possible, right? To make sure that people don't get confused. And when we do see things that are different, we try to attribute meaning to that. And when it's arbitrary, then we're just like, wait a second, but why did the date and time was in red over there and it's gray over here? Like, does that mean something? And often it just doesn't.
And then you're going to lose trust. I mean, that is a key way to like, I mean, all of these things, but this one, you know, if things start changing, we've talked about this before, like for a bank website, they look a little off and you're like, oh, that credit card looks like that over there, but not over there. And you're like, wow, you're handling my money. Do I trust you? Like, come on, you know, like little things like that are going to just live in your memory of that brand, of that organization. And that's not good.
Yeah. It is like kind of like chipping away at the trust by 1,000 cuts. Like these all, like you might be thinking out there like, oh, that's not that big of a deal, but all these little things add up. And when you have all these unintuitive objects and you have masked objects and shapeshifters with the same object, right? So you have like, and a lot of that's what we discussed, like with the trainers and the visitors, like that's masking and shapeshifting happening at the same time. And it creates a lot of cognitive load. It creates a lot of confusion. People lose trust. They end up feeling dumb. And then like you're the brand that made them feel dumb. And we know as user experience designers, we do not want that. So to wrap this up, at the end of the day, OUX and ORCA helps us understand the truth of a system, of a domain, and the system that is going to reflect that domain so clearly by understanding the O's, the R's, the C's, and the A's. And that really helps us make sure our digital systems are just intuitive as possible by avoiding all these main UX fails that we talk about. And that just makes life hard for users. It makes life harder for our developers often, and even for us as designers. So it really is as simple as that, okay? Like avoiding those fails, making sure your O's, your R's, your C's, and your A's are super relevant, okay? As a sort of backbone that Allie said, the backbone of the process, making sure you really understand all of those. It really is that simple. But I will say when you do get into complex abstract domains, when you get into like B2B insurance or, supply chain management or something like that, or healthcare or government, this really does turn into an art and a science. And that is what this community is all about. Like it really does sometimes take a trained professional to facilitate this kind of collaboration, to get everybody in agreement on what the O's, the R's, the C's, and the A's are. Like not just the intricacies of that, but like sometimes just the fundamentals, like what is the difference between a feeding and a demonstration, right? Like, are they different? Are they the same? So the ORCA process is actually 4 rounds. We go through O, R, C, and A. We go through it through a discovery round, which is all about just understanding and like smoking out the complexity. We go through a requirements round, which like gets really deep into the requirements around the O's, the R's, the C's, and the A's. We go through a prioritization round where you can actually prioritize and roadmap a system through your O's, your R's, your C's, and your A's. And then we go into the representation round where we bring it all together with all of our OUXy artifacts, like our object maps and our nav flows and our CTA matrices. And we build systems that are completely free of all of these UX fails. So anything else, Allie, that you want to add?
I will just say that these 4 rounds, like once you can level up and like learn the basics of them, then you get to have a lot of fun where like I'm at now of playing with and using the different pieces, just depending on whatever challenge I have, right? Or whatever I'm dealing with. So I could be starting with a little bit of discovery at first. Then I might go into prioritization because that's really important. So it's kind of like, once you learn, then you can take the training wheels off and really have fun with using it in different ways. And I find that to be just the most exciting part of it. Like once you understand everything and can use it in different ways throughout, like I said, I mean, I'm using it throughout my work life, my normal life of understanding and learning. When I'm going out and going to Disney World and experiencing things, you're using it everywhere and thinking about things. And it's just, a wonderful tool for that.
I mean, I love that you said that and that you brought that in, that like, because we go through the O, the R, the C, and the A, we do 4 rounds.
Yeah.
It's a 16-step process, actually. So I've said 15 in the past. It actually just got upgraded to 16. So which is people are like, oh my God, that's so much process. And like my hands would just be tied and where would my creativity go? No. This makes you more creative. It gives you tools to basically have this understanding, but then you can kind of say, oh, I need like a little bit of prioritization here while I'm in discovery. I need to bring in some of these tools we have in the requirements round, and I need to bring it in, during representation. Like you're mixing it, you're mashing it up with other tools. We have a lot of people that are mashing it up with jobs to be done, and design systems, of course, as well. So it does integrate with other stuff that you are doing and just supports it and brings it even more to life. So if you're ready to get started and start clearing up the chaos and add some OUX rocket fuel to your process and build more intuitive systems, check out the links below to get plugged in. Put your questions up there and let us know how it goes. Happy OUXing.
Happy OUXing. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. Please visit objectorientedux.com/podcast for show notes. Our soundtrack is Fighter by Ruby Vell, courtesy of